Welcome to The Pursuit, a podcast produced by the Junior Board of the Chicago Midwest chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, otherwise known as NATAS. We are a group of emerging media professionals seeking insight from leaders in our fields. I'm Tiyen Simmons, an undergrad student at Governor State University, and I am also your host for this episode. Today, we will be talking to former WTTW producer, professor of media studies, and coordinator of development, Yevette Brown. This woman has pioneered her way through the Chicago media industry, collaborating with media professionals on Emmy-winning projects, along with teaching students, such as myself, what it takes to have success in the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Yevette Brown.
Take me through you growing up. You always knew from a young age that you wanted to be a writer. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you know that you wanted to pursue the career of being a writer and producer?
My family was a very Southern family based in Chicago. So much of the experience in the household were New Orleans food and Southern food and blues music and, very much the culture that my parents were raised in. But as a child, once you start school in Chicago, you become a South Sider. And my memories are very much that I've always been a pretty creative child, the unusual one of the three. I was the middle kid. So I've always been an artistic spirit, kind of shy introvert, and loved to write and read. Books were like a sanctuary. I loved my library card. The first credit card I ever got as a young adult was to a store called Crocs and Brentano's, which no longer exists. It was a bookstore. So books are very important to me. Reading is very important to me. So I was a little egghead kid who liked to read. I remember my parents, if they wanted to punish someone, they would, know not to make me have to stay inside. My sister hated to be grounded because she had to be out. They ground me, I just read. I love to be grounded. I can sit and read my books.
How did you get into reading?
I think people are born loving books. Or not. Everybody has the art that they like. And I just love to read. I think reading goes in hand with being a writer, with being an artist. My art is writing. So, of course, to be a great writer, you must read. You must read other people's writing. If you want to be a great television or filmmaker, you must watch TV and other people's films. If you're going to be a great musician, well, you certainly got to love music and watch and listen to other artists. And that's the same thing with a writer. So books are the entryway to being a great writer. So I was naturally always a great writer. My talent was that. We all are born with talents. I don't believe anyone comes here without something that's special and unique about them. And I was always the kid that had a nose in the book and a pen in my hand, writing poetry or whatever it is that struck my fancy. And that's what led me to my ultimate career. I kind of didn't think, I was grow up to be a television producer, but I always thought I wanted to grow up and be a writer. So that was the gateway for me. Sometimes you're just born loving what you love, One great person, Lena Horne, I'll never forget her because I did a lot of interviews as part of my career. And she said, you just can't fight your nature.
I am kind of starting to get more into books. Of course, that wasn't my first. Like you said, everyone's born like loving something or, with an art form that they really love. Mine was always like music and drawing and sketching, but I'm just starting to, transition towards like reading.
I guess when you fall in love with books and with the spoken word and with speech and communication, it's natural to want to create your own. Loving the words and pages in my library card, I could spend hours just hanging in the library. I know that sounds real dorky, but it's the truth. It was my safe place, is where I like to go. And museums were the second place. I love history and I love writing. So you kind of naturally fall into it. And you start in school. It's always a teacher. It's always someone who notices that, oh my goodness, you're really a good writer. Usually let's say, I would say in the late 60s, because we're talking someone who might be 10 years old, who is starting to read and speak, because sometimes you have to remember the generation and the decade you're talking about, that people don't automatically expect you to be brilliant for many reasons, as we well know, or to be smart, or to like books, or to write poetry, and teacher who cared enough to pay attention realized I could write, and I was very quiet. So sometimes when you're very quiet, people overlook, especially girls, little Black girls, especially Black children, even today. And I'm very mindful of that. And in this late 60s, that wasn't always the case. So I was just doodle and write and daydream. And the teacher realized that I was a good writer. My work was always better than most because I like to write. I loved it when I got a poetry. I can write a poem. Okay. Everybody else like, me. I was like, all right, bring it. One of my favorite stories when I write poetry. This is probably naughty to say. So my friends were football players. They hated writing the poetry when I was in high school. They do anything. I'm not to write it. So I said, cool. I'll write a poem for you. They're gonna know it's not yours. But I had to. It was fun teaching them to write a poem so they could actually pass the English class. But I love that. So it goes from one thing to another because a good teacher will keep introducing you to things. So, okay, maybe we started with writing a short poem. Then they talk about haiku poems that use 6 words. Then they'll tell you what about a short story. And then they'll introduce you to other writers and books. And that is how you grow into whatever art you want to grow into. If you like music, then someone must have heard you either sing or play or do something and realize, okay, would you like to try the flute? Or which instrument do you like best? Did you know there's something called a saxophone? Someone leads you. And I had lucky that I had great teachers, especially when I hit high school. Artists can't fight their talent. They are what they are and they have to do it. So I had to write and I found ways to do it, and teachers were the key to that. Would be the best way to answer that question. And, there are many ways to write and you have to discover that.
What kind of poems do you like writing? Because I'm into poetry as well. I don't know if you knew that.
Well, in my day, it was all about Langston Hughes. What happened to a dream defer? Yeah, I used to be able to recite his poems back and forth. And I love that in the 70s, they started doing what you guys call spoken word. There's poetry and then there's something called spoken word. The revolution cannot be televised. Those poems that came out in the 70s. And I believe when I knew him, his name was Leroy Jones. I can't say Hakeem Mahabuti. I'm probably messing up his name, but a lot of those poets were in Chicago in the 70s, and they actually mentored and really worked with some of the youngins. I went to University of Illinois in Chicago, so it was in the middle of a lot of those young upcoming Black poets who were based here. It was really, really wonderful to learn from them. Nonetheless, you find in many ways to write, and that's how I discovered television. And I didn't realize you could write for TV. You can't be what you don't see, and that is a very true thing. I had not yet met or seen a lot of Black reporters. That didn't start really till I started. I'm some of the first Black producers in Chicago. So it was interesting to discover that when I was in college. Someone told me about this new thing, this new major, this TV communication. There's a new TV studio downstairs, and I went and looked, and it was like a TV studio there. And they were training, and we would take TV classes. So I knew I couldn't tell my parents I was going to college to be a poet. So I enrolled in speech communications and I majored in television. And that's what happened because they said, you can write for TV. Yeah, you can. So they had writing classes. I fell into it. And I liked it a lot.
So you mentioned you got your bachelor's in speech and communications from, you said, University of Illinois of Chicago.
The television track was in the speech communication department at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And I went on to get my graduate degree at Northwestern because I wanted more writing. And of course, Northwestern had an amazing radio, TV, film department. So that I went there to get as much knowledge as I can, because you always got to be the one who's most overqualified when you're trying to break into something, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, so you want to know as much as you can know because it's very competitive.
Walk me through some of the culture there of UIC and Northwestern as far as the media culture, because you did mention at UIC, it was up and coming Black poets and those that are into writing. Can you talk to me a little bit about the culture, both at Northwestern and UIC?
The culture. Well, now we're talking graduating from high school in 1971. I got out a year early because I was that girl. Yeah, I was ready to go. So I entered U of I in I guess it would be, I'm trying to remember if it was in the August, early September, I suppose it doesn't matter, but fall of 1971. And it was a really interesting time. We're talking the 70s here. I'm a 70s child. So I love that it still is important to your generation because it was really cool. I must admit, we broke the rules, made new rules, broke some more. And what was great about it was finally a time when many young Black people were trying to get a college education. It'd been denied so much, and it was hard in some places and easier in others. And because of a wonderful history teacher I went to South Shore High School in the South Side of Chicago, recognizing my talent and fighting to make sure that I would go to college. I was able to go to the University of Illinois. Someone, my guidance counselor, was funny. She said, "Oh, you're so well spoken. You write so well. You could be a great executive assistant." I'm like, executive assistant? My beautiful brother, who was the history teacher. He said, "You're not going to be nobody's executive assistant. You're going to college." And my parents wanted that, and they worked together. And U of I was at the cutting edge of helping Black students, minority students, students of color, underserved communities, whatever we call it, changes every day, what we call it. And that community, they wanted to embrace and help. And I was able to get a scholarship. It was a teaching scholarship because I thought I would be a history teacher. Of course, I love my history teacher. I loved history. Okay, I'll be a teacher. When I first went into University of Illinois, and keep in mind, I had discovered the television studio in the basement area of the speech communications building. So it was history teacher. And what was so funny is life does a full circle on you. When I discovered TV, I gave up my scholarship, which is a bold move. My parents almost had a fit because I couldn't keep it. I was going to be a teacher. You can keep a teaching scholarship. So it was on me to get 2 jobs and find more money. And I decided I found a way to get around the rule of you're going to star. I can be a writer. And the culture there was cool because many African students were coming over at that time from the motherland. In the 70s, we all wanted to know about Africa. We wanted to wear the gay lace and the kente cloth, and we wanted to discover. That's what the 70s was about. And it was very cool to see those 2 cultures blend, kind of, and, learn from each other. Some really interesting debates in the place we call it the pit, where the Black students hung out. I never learned to play cards, so I wasn't the one over there doing, whatever they played. What was the big game? Spades or something? I don't even remember. I'm not into that. But I love debating the African students, so that's what I did. I'm down in the pit. Everybody's playing their cards, and I'm over there talking about, you can talk about that, but why don't we have more leaders in bed? I loved it. That was me. I loved talking to the African students and learning how much we were alike and how much we're very different. So that was the culture at U of I. And then, being part of media, we got to record stories. And, I was a writer, so I found it interesting to be with different kinds of students because the 70s started bringing different cultures together. And we discovered things that were not just in our community, because you've got to reach outside of yourself or your community to really grow and bring that back. So there was a lot to learn from my African brothers and sisters, and they learned a lot from us. It was a meeting of cultures. Northwestern was very different from Circle, or University of Illinois Chicago campus, as it's called now. I got some scholarship help there, but I had to work very hard to be at Northwestern. I got in, and my teachers at University of Illinois had a lot to do with getting me into the program. And it was one of the first times, things came very easy to me because I was a very good student. That was just me. I bookworm, right? Well, Northwestern was a great experience to teach me that you have to work very hard, because once you get in the room with many minds who are the best in their field, because it was a competitive program, you do like me. I fell asleep on my typewriter one night trying to do a paper. It was all-night paper. I fell asleep, woke up with ink on my forehead from the letters, because keep in mind, I have computers. I had a typewriter. You know what one of those are, right? Because I still have that typewriter. Actually, it was a portable. and the whiteout and very different way of doing things. That's why I don't have any sympathy for you students today. Cut and paste and all the stuff you have on the computer. Yes, I fell asleep on that doggone typewriter because I realized that you have to work hard. No one's smarter than you. It's not about that. Because once you get to a certain level, everybody in the room is smart. It's about work ethic. It comes down to work ethic. Who wants it more? Who's willing to work the hardest, the longest? Who's the one who's thinking? Who's the one coming up with solutions, not just problems? And if there's a problem, finding the solution. Who's that person? And that's what Northwestern taught me. I was smart. I got in there, but everybody was smart. But, people will outwork you. And that's what you have to remember. It's about attitude and work ethic once you're in the room with smart people. And then you take it to the next level, attitude and work ethic. What does that mean? It means I'm not just looking at what's before me, I'm thinking about what the next step is. What does that mean for this thing and that thing? I'm the problem solver. You're the person coming up with the ideas, not just executing other people's ideas. That's what Northwestern's culture was. And it was great to be in because it'll build your confidence once you get behind the curtain and realize these people aren't smarter than me. In fact, some of them kind of not as smart as I thought they'd be. You get behind the curtain, people, are all they try to tell you, a lot of it's bluffing and confidence, right? So you have to learn to bluff and be confident and deliver work ethic. So Northwestern taught me that I was equal. It helped get rid of some of that, insecurity about who you are from listening to the world. You start listening to yourself and to people who were smart and that you're hanging with. And that's your answer. So that was the culture of Northwestern. No more playing bid with, I believe. That was out the door. This was serious business. This was research. This was people asking you for your opinion based on some facts you had figured out. So it was a different level of intellectual pursuit once you get into grad school. So that was Northwestern, and I really appreciated being there. It made me better.
Was that the moment, was going to Northwestern, was that the moment you kind of have faith in, you kind of knew that you were good at, what you do?
I'll never forget this pretentious person who was in my class. And that besides being one of 2 Black students, I was also one of 3 women. So it was kind of interesting sitting in the room with the men. At that time, we're talking 1975 at this point. And there was one who didn't smoke a pipe. He just had one in his hand and he liked to just fiddle with it. Don't ask me why. This guy never smoked it, never saw him smoke it. I didn't hang out with him, but he had it in his hand and he always wanted to answer questions and we all should, because you're expected to. You can't sit in the back of the room. And I wish I could remember what the question was because it was wrong and I corrected it. And the room went silent and I realized I can speak up and add to a conversation and have the correct answer just as good as theirs. I don't have to sit there waiting to see if I'm going to be called on. I just couldn't take it anymore, the pretentiousness of the answer and the pipe. And it just, wait a minute. I don't think so. If I remember correctly, it was something about production. I learned to have a voice. And it taught me to speak up for myself and have a voice and raise my hand because doggone it, he didn't have the right answer. I did. So therefore, why shouldn't I talk? He didn't care that he was brave enough to raise his hand and attempt it. So I learned there that I'm as good as anybody in that room. If I'm willing to work for it, I have access to the same book he has access to, right? I can do the same research. So that was the moment I said, okay, it's on. It was on. And I loved it.
You're listening to The Pursuit, the weekly podcast produced by the Junior Board of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Chicago Midwest Chapter. I'm John Owens. I'm the NATIS Chicago Midwest Chapter President. And I'd like to congratulate all those who received awards at our most recent Emmy celebration on December 5th. We're looking forward to bringing our Emmy and Silver Circle events back to a live audience in 2022. In the meantime, our chapter will be hosting a number of workshops in the next few months, including events co-sponsored with the National Association of Black Journalists, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and the National Association of Asian American Journalists. We'll also stage our annual career fair later this winter, along with other self-improvement workshops. Go to our website at chicagomeonline.org for more information about the upcoming events. And now, back to the pursuit.
Talk to me a little bit about your competitive nature and how that kind of benefited you from, just giving up, because it's a competitive field. We talk about it a lot in class. It's a competitive field, and you really have to be resilient.
It's not for the weak of nature and the shy. You got to learn to get out of that part, because it's it's television. You're dealing with writers and artists, yes, but also people who are broadcasters and people going into reporting and producing. I didn't realize I was such a good producer. I knew I was a good writer, but producing is a whole nother element of that. And you need a competitive nature. And I wasn't always that way. People don't believe it, of course. Oh, you're so outgoing. I was really quiet, shy child, a bookworm. And I picked writing, but writing is not just the only thing you do in TV. Usually writers are either writer directors or writer producers. There's something else there you have to do. Very seldom in this world you only can write. Maybe if you're a screenwriter in Hollywood, but then if you're going to be competitive, you want to become a showrunner. So you never just usually can sit and just write your favorite things. So competition became a big part, because I realized that people will walk over your face. I had a good friend who told me that. I was got my first production assistant job at newsroom at Channel 2, because you got to do internships. An internship got me that job when I graduated from grad school. I'm the only one with a graduate degree, and I still had become a news production assistant. But I still hadn't realized how aggressive you have to be in television. I figured it out in grad school, because you compete and you do your thesis and all that. That's research. Okay, but the real world is where it really gets down to it. And I was in line to be the senior production assistant. It was, because you usually pick that way. Oh, but yeah, right. Somebody walked over my face and I was like, wait a minute, I'm next in line. And the associate producer who had the same thing happen to her, and she had to learn it, that yes, you were, but you got to also elbow your way up there and it's still fight and snatch it. And I had learned as a production assistant, the competition is part of it. If you're going to get the story, you can't wait for it to come to you. You got to get out there, try to break it first. You've got to be on the phone. You got to figure it out. People don't give Emmys away. Those guys are out there in the field trying to get their own, and women. And it was a field that my generation was kind of the first generation that had our degrees in television, because historically, people who went into communication, TV, production newsrooms, many of them came out of the Army or armed services. They came out as engineers and so forth. They were the camera guys. They became the engineers communicating people. That's what they did in the armed services, and many of them came right into TV, this new 1970s world. And you're going to rule that. You got to get up out of your shyness and start speaking up. And I learned it then.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the importance of internships and how that'll kind of drive at least start your career as far as, where you want to go.
I always told my students how important it is to do an internship. I did 2 internships. A lot of students do 2, but you got to do 1, because that's how you get people to notice you. That's how you ask questions. That's how you see the real world. That's how you get mentorship. That's how you get someone to speak up for you. That's how you get people to tell you the stuff you see behind the curtain. Yes, well, this is what you should do. Why don't you contact this? That's how you get to look at the job board that's next to the newsroom. That's how you get to meet HR people. That's how you get to see how it's really made. School prepares you for your career, but it's not the beginning and end of it. You've got to, know that the real learning starts when you graduate, and it continues for the rest of your life. If I had to say the most important thing, besides making sure you intern and get an internship and know that you have to be great at it, because everybody's going there with the same goals. You got to have, IQ is important, being smart, learning the book knowledge, that's very important, that's your base. But that EQ that you develop, that emotional intelligence that you develop and take and show people, I got 10 people who are fabulous. I got 10 fabulous interns, and I can only hire 2. So it's about who has the most curiosity, who's the one who's always willing to learn new things, who's the one who communicates well, who's the one who has the right attitude, who's the one who wants to be there early and stay late, who's the one who's the most hungry, and last thing, who's the one I like, who's the one I want to spend my time with. Sometimes I got to be in that edit room for hours, and if I don't, it's got to be somebody that I want to spend my time with too. So that all those things are important to being successful. And it starts with internship, pressing people with who you are and letting them see who you are and being your best self. That doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. Oof, we all got a few we could talk about, but it means that you rise above it and keep moving, and you bring solutions and a good attitude to the process. And internships help you get there. Nobody's going to know you if you never go out there, right? You got to show yourself, right?
Yeah, I'm actually been doing some internships, so that's good to know that it's not in vain. You're meeting people, you're collaborating. Talk to me a little bit about collaboration. I know that's one of the biggest things in media in this generation for sure. Just collaborating with people.
Yes, because no one wins an Emmy by themselves. No one succeeds alone. TV is a collaborative team sport. It doesn't mean that you aren't responsible. The buck stops with the producer. But if there's a problem, I take responsibility for it. I'm the producer. But if there's success, I share it with everybody. And that is a policy you should have if you're going to be a leader. People got to want to follow you. And if they want to follow you, it's because you're treating them well, you're leading well, and you're taking responsibility. Yeah, if the editor messed up, he messed up, and we may talk about that, but I'm not throwing him under the bus. I'm the producer. It's my responsibility to figure it out and make the team work, because collaboration is what it's all about. I'm not shooting, editing, writing, getting in front of camera. Well, nowadays you probably can, but in those days, I had a team. I had a vision. I walked in there. I was organized. I gave him its proper respect. I had a camera woman, she was tugging that in the hot heat, but I made sure that I was organized and gave her direction and respected her skill and her art. It's so important. The producer, people say, what does a producer do? Because when you say you're a writer, you're right. You know what does a producer do? I said, basically they're a jack of all trades, organizer of the whole action, conception to completion. That's the producer. Everything related to that production is your responsibility. That means you better hire the right people, get a good director, and then we're talking television because there are different roles if you're doing film. In TV, the producer tends to lead it all and hire who they're going to work with. Producers can be producer, director, writer. Oftentimes, they are producer writers. We feel direct because you go out and you direct, but usually if I'm in a studio, then I have a director. So I'm hiring and putting together the team in television. So I'm responsible for who I hired. I mean, if that person messed up, maybe you hired the wrong person, that's your fault. Or if that person was fabulous, you made a good choice. So you put together the team, you organize it, you stay up nights solving the problems. You're the problem solver. So that's what a producer does. And they're responsible for putting the team together and executing the concept and making sure it's done properly. And I like that part of the organization. So collaboration is key if you're going to be a producer. It's key if you're going to be a director, because director in TV kind of handles the technical team. So though I may handle the director is handling the vision technically that I have. But usually it's the producer's vision. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not a documentary director. But usually then you'll hire a producer to take care of the rest so you can direct. Most directors don't want to produce it, but some do. Most directors like to direct their own writing, though. But if you're really smart and you're a director and you have your product is written, you get a kick butt producer who worries about making sure all that other stuff is in place so you can focus on your vision of your film, for instance. So
talk to us a little bit about the difference that technology has taken in this day of media. How has it changed?
I actually love technology. I'm a little techie in my own way, but not in the way that some people are who live and breathe it. I know enough as a producer to know what I need and how to ask for it, because technology is so important. It changes every day. Alvin Toffler, my favorite quote for education and for students: the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that was written way back. He was a futurist, and he was smart, and he was right. Because what he was telling you is that to keep up with what he saw coming, what is now here, the 21st century and technology, you had to be willing to learn new things constantly. And that's what a producer or a media person has to do. The miniaturization of technology, everything getting so small. And then streaming changed the whole game the internet, I mean, my gosh. So technology is a main tool in your creativity. And the person keeps his eye or her eye on the future and understand how that impacts their work. That's the superstar. You can all work hard, but the superstars are the ones who know the changes that technology will bring and can embrace it and use it to keep producing their art. That's something to always remember. You know, so that's what I think about technology. And I've always been someone who's had to learn and unlearn computer editing. We had to throw out that linear stuff and, and had to totally computers. We had to learn how to write the scripts on the computers. That electric typewriter was out of the newsroom, so I know. I've seen a lot of change, and more change is coming when AI and virtual reality and the fact that gaming and media are merged. Someone saw that coming. Anyone could have seen that coming. I don't know why people act so shocked by it these days, that the storytelling in gaming and the storytelling in TV and film would all merge together and serve each other. Yeah. So keep your eye on it.
I've noticed that me growing up, I started out as, not really too much knowing what I wanted to do. I was kind of like you, had a number of interests. I was kind of introverted, kind of shy. And I noticed that once I started getting into media, I've learned to be more ambitious and be more getting out of my comfort zone, more outspoken. And do you think that ambition comes like as you age or as you grow? Like, if so, like, how do you foster that into, everyday life?
My son came here as a true Leo. Oh, loud. Hey, right from the moment I met him. And my daughter was always more reserved, quiet. I see their baby pictures. One is like yelling and the other one is like, where am I? And they've always had those similar personalities. But then you have nurture. Ambition is something you can learn. Some people, my little granddaughter, my gosh, that girl came here ambitious. She was telling everybody and giving side eye when she was 2. We don't know where that came from, but that was her personality. So some people come with big personalities. Some people come with quieter personalities, But when you find that thing that is your thing, that just rocks your boat, ambition comes because you want to do the best with it. You love it. And that's something you learn and you grow with. Everybody don't come here knowing what they want and ready to tell the world about it. A few people do, of course, exceptions to all rules. But when you discover your thing, you'll be surprised how ambitious you get to do the best you can with it, to learn about it, to grow in it. Maturity brings a recognitions of ambition and how to use it and how to grow it, how to moderate it. That's what maturity brings. But the desire to do something you love, that's ambition. Otherwise, you wouldn't even try, right? Ambition means I'm going to try this because I want to get good at it. I want to learn more about it. I want to be, better. And then here's the thing that happens when you're kind of an introvert that looks like an extrovert, like myself, is you realize that, but I want other people to see it now. you get, you never knew you'd be like that. Like, gee, I want everybody to hear this song I just wrote. I want everyone to see the film I just made. I want this. That's ambition. But it usually comes out of a desire to do what you love. You don't want to do it inside the house. If you're going to dance, we all dance. But if you're really a dancer, you want to be on the stage. You may be quiet as pie when you get off the stage and the lights go down. But when that light comes up, you want your dance seen. That's where ambition comes from, a love of your art. Most artists can be a little reserved and quirky. I mean, that's the nature of being an artist. But those who really love what they do want to share it. Art is meant to be shared. And you have, and if you don't have enough ambition to do it, that's why you get representatives. That's why you have an agent. That's why you get a manager, right? Because sometimes artists are really have a hard time with that hardcore ambition stuff. And that's why they invented a way to help you. Ambition is important. So I became more ambitious. I realized what the reward of it was. And when I realized that I had something to say, so why not? And yes, maturity helps you to moderate your ambition in a way that's positive and successful. That's all. It doesn't create it where it never was. I'm 40 now, I'm ambitious. No, every tiny step you make in life should be in service of the big steps. So that ambition has to start early. And if you can't do it for yourself, you get somebody who can do it for you. That's simple.
I think that's really important that you said that because, you're a producer, writer, you were in academia. Just a producer alone, you're going to be everywhere. Your hands are really full a lot of the time. Can you talk to me a little bit about work-life balance and how you kind of foster that into your life?
You service all parts of who you are. I love producing my job. I've enjoyed it. I did it, all of my life, even up to retirement. I still worked freelance. I still produced even when I was in academia, but I loved it. I loved creating and I loved meeting people and learning new things and tackling new ideas. But I also love time with my family. I also love traveling. I mean, artists have to feed their souls to create art. You can't do it in a vacuum. You always want to grow and learn. And part of that is your art, part of that is learning new things, and a big part of that is being happy in who you are, whoever that may be, with your partners and your family life, with your parents, with your siblings. Because when you're not balanced in your personal life, it impacts your professional life. It just does. And if you overdo your professional life, it's going to impact and hurt your personal life. So it's always a dance. Some days you have to be here more than you're there. Sometimes you can't have everything at once. You got to put it, today I do this and tomorrow I'll do that. But paying attention to your full life.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I say that all the time. Like you have to, if you're an artist, you're not just one form of art. Like say if you like painting, you're not only a painter. There's all facets of art that you kind of have to foster and take care of. And that, like you said, that kind of comes with growing and finding new things, meeting new people, things like that. What are some pros and cons of being a producer or being a writer or just being in the media field in general?
The pros are easy because I got to be in the room with people I would have never gotten to be in the room with, whether it's Arm & Hammer or Whoopi Goldberg or, Michael Jackson or whoever you get to meet and casually, or talk on the phone with Tupac Shakur, or get to meet, go to the White House and tour it, whatever you get to do, great chefs, and just get in the room with people that you never thought you could. Being a producer gives you a front row to some really cool stuff. So, people, I envy the producers who can go see the space launch. I'm like, they get to do all this cool stuff. How could that not be a pro? You get to front row tickets to concerts. Prince, yes. Okay, it was great. And because I tend to produce public affairs and art, I got a lot of cool stuff that we could talk about for hours, and that I got to see, witness, participate in, enjoy. So that was a big pro, being in a front row to life and interesting happenings. And it's a lot more pros than cons normally, getting the restaurants you couldn't get into because you're doing a story on the chef. I mean, that's great. The cons might be that there were times when I really had to be away a lot. When my daughter was small, I traveled a lot. I'm not a big fan of airplanes, and I had to learn to be, jumping in and off airports and moving fast. And you meet a lot of great people, and you meet some who aren't so great. You still got to make it work, Sometimes things go way to the left, and you're still responsible for getting it right and getting it back. I tell the story of the rain that happened on the story. It was due to go up the next day, so you better figure out how to use that rain and come up with a story, because executive producer, they don't care. They want the story told. Find a new way to get what you need. The con is that sometimes stuff doesn't work and you still got to make it work. And that can be very stressful. Producers and media people have high anxiety, because you got to get to the front of that road to get that shot. But it's worth it. It's worth the sleepless nights about, oh my God, I got to be at that. Got to be calling and telling people, can you get there at 4 a.m.? I know that's early, but we got to do it. That's part of the job. And it can take you away from your family a lot. It can make you have to break some dates you didn't want to break. But that's the price you paid to be in the front row to history.
What is some advice?
People say, what do you have to do to be a producer? I've risen to senior producer. I've won my Emmy. I've worked with people. I've traveled to so many interesting places and met amazing people. I remember meeting Armand Hammer, lucky to have 15 minutes with him. He was on a show that I was working on. And the thing he said that made him the big billionaire that he was. I mean, this is a man who made pencils for the Russian Revolution. And he took time to actually talk to me. I was like, so humbled by that, so young. And he said that you have to stay curious. You have to, that's why he came out with that famous quote, find a need and fill it. You're always looking for the next thing, you're always learning. You're looking at the world to see what can you do? What fits into your world? What do you want to learn about? So having a constant curiosity is what you need as a producer or media person, being that lifelong learner. You can major in politics and be a producer. But the catch is, do you want to learn? Do you want to know? Do you want to grow? Do you want to inform? Do you want to meet people? Are you curious about the world? Always stay curious and always want to learn. Students think they leave class and, okay, I've learned it. No, learning goes on to the day you close your eyes. I'm still learning. And if you want to do that, then you will be successful. Be a good communicator. Learn your art to the best you can, whatever your art is, but never stop learning and never give up curiosity about people in the world. I would give that as the best advice to a young person who wants to be an engaged person and who wants to create whatever that may be.
It has been an honor conversing with Yevette Brown as she shed light on the industry and the thing that she's learned. According to Yevette, work ethic is what separates the good from the great. She also explains that one should stay curious and be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn as not only a producer, but as an engaged person. Now, on behalf of the NATIS Junior Board of the Chicago Midwest Chapter, we would like to thank you for being a part of this journey. This has been The Pursuit, a NATIS Junior Board podcast.